And okay, we're good to go, Mr. Chairman.
The November 26, 2021 meeting of the Long Hill Township Planning Board is called to order at 7:31. Can we have the announcements, please?
Absolutely. Call to order and statement of compliance. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by posting a copy of the public meeting dates on the municipal bulletin board and website, by sending a copy to the Echo Sentinel newspaper, and by filing a copy with the municipal clerk. Number 2, standard board procedures. Any hearing conducted by the board is a quasi-judicial proceeding. Any questions or comments must be limited to issues that are relevant to what the board may legally consider in reaching a decision, and decorum appropriate to a judicial hearing must be maintained at all times. Number 3, meeting cutoff. Announcement is made that as a matter of procedure, it is the intention of the planning board not to continue any matter past 10:30 p.m. at any regular or special meeting of the board unless a motion is passed by the members then present to extend the meeting to a later specified cutoff time. Now, share the screen for Pledge of Allegiance. To the flag of
The United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Justice for all. Good job.
Get back to my roll call. Deputy Mayor Ray will be joining us late this evening. Committeeman Verleza has not joined us yet. Ms. Dill?
Here.
Mr. Hands?
Here.
Mr. Malinowski?
Here.
Mr. File is excused this evening. Mr. Richardson?
Here.
Vice Chairman Jones?
Present.
Chairman Sandow?
Here,
Chairman, we have a quorum.
and for the record, all the professionals have been excused tonight. The next item on the agenda is the elite application, which we have been carrying since March. They apparently are still not ready because they apparently still have not received blessing from the DEP. And so we're going to carry them. So they have been blocking the schedule every month since June by asking for a 1-month extension and then not showing up. So we're going to take charge of that, and we're going to carry them tonight to January the 25th.
Oh, 25th, sorry, yeah.
Which is 3 months from now. That'll give them a chance to get their act together and come back to us when and if they are ready. But in the meantime, we can set up a firm agenda for the rest of our business. So can I have a motion to carry the elite application to January 25th with no further notice?
So motioned.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you. While we're talking about that, let's skip to item number 10 and talk about our upcoming schedule. The next meeting on the 9th of November will be a joint meeting to interview candidates for the position of board engineer for both the boards. The following meeting on November 23rd will be the area in need study for the car wash site. We're going to lock that in now that Elite is not going to be blocking that date. In case the area in need study does not complete in one night, we will hold a special meeting on November 30th. That's the following Tuesday, in order to attempt to complete the area in need study. We will have to schedule that special meeting now, but if we don't need it, we will cancel it. And I would like a motion, please, to schedule a special meeting for November 30th.
Fine, so motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. On December 14th, we expect to see Parisi, Delaware Avenue, come back with a new application. We haven't seen that yet, but that's the agenda item that is predominant that night. Are there any questions about the schedule? Good. Hope to
One
see
quick
you.
question.
Yes, David.
Sorry, Dan. Just one quick question. Do you think, when do you think Jessica will get the report to us on the redevelopment? Any ideas yet?
Say that again.
When do you think Jessica will get the report to us?
Thursday, Thursday, November 4th.
She's committed to that, has she?
Yes, the law says that we have to notice that hearing 17 days in advance. The ECHO's issue that meets the 17-day limit is the issue of Thursday, November 4th. So the November 23rd meeting will be noticed on the 4th, and at that point, the document will be available to the public and available to the members. So you'll have 19 days to read it and get ready for it.
Okay. Thanks, Dennis.
The last time we did one of these studies, it took 5 meetings. I'm hoping that we can dispose of this in 1 meeting, or at worst in 2 meetings.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Tom.
Yeah, Deb, has there been any responses to RFPs for board engineer?
Responses? Yes, only one RFP has been received so far.
Okay,
I anticipate them coming in by by Friday, because I mean, in my experience, engineers usually wait till the very last minute.
with good reason.
Tom
That
and
doesn't seem very
we understand
engineering
that.
centric.
We've been in
Really?
that boat.
So
The timing issue there is that we'll have less than 2 weeks to line up an interview meeting for the 9th. So the committee is going to have to work rather frantically. And if you
well, Teresa, you'll have to chime in here and let me know how this worked. I think actually the way with the committees worked last time worked really well, in that I sent the RFPs to all the committee members. The committee members all came back with their 3 picks, and the top 3 were the ones we interviewed for attorney. So Teresa, do you think that went well?
Yeah, like we had, I think, intended to have a Zoom, I think, right? And to discuss those, but I think it ended up working just as fine for people to evaluate on their own and then give their top 3.
Yeah, I agree. So that way, if I can get everything out to Tom and Dawn on Monday, are you guys okay with that format? And then you would have, let's say a week and a half to, to basically, or a week to look over the candidates and then let me know what your picks are.
Makes sense.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it would be good to have some kind of even a phone discussion though. Teresa, did you have the Zoom meeting or was it?
No, Deb, why didn't we? We intended to, but I think everyone was away and we were like really tight for getting them notice, getting the attorneys notice, that is.
Well, I don't even think it was that, because I basically told all the attorneys, listen, keep your schedule open, but I think what happened ultimately was that all the members couldn't get together for a date, couldn't come up with an agreeable date.
Right. I guess my point is just that, like, we intended to, it did not work to meet. And so then it ended up working out fine that we didn't. So of course, meeting is probably better than not.
I should point out that the engineer committee is chaired by zoning board chairman Garect, and he stated that he would prefer a face-to-face meeting.
He does like a face-to-face, yes.
And
With just the committee or with the engineer?
with the committee at minimum, although he
Right,
did
okay.
also say he liked the pre-interview with all the candidates. And I don't know how that plays out. That'll be his call.
Yeah, and I have a problem. I'm gonna be out of town. I'm gonna be in North Carolina next week, so I can Zoom call it, but I can't be in person.
Well, I do believe most of the members of both committees, other than Ed, have expressed Zoom as their preferred meeting if it works out that way. So I'll
Right.
pull them and I'll be in touch with you both and we'll see what happens.
Okay, yeah, I
Thank
don't
you.
think there's enough time to meet with all the engineers.
I will leave it in the capable hands of the committee members and the secretary. And in case I didn't mention it, Teresa, thank you for all your work with the attorney committee.
Mhm.
No problem. Thank you. I, got a lot of help and guidance for both you and Ed, and Deb, of course.
And
All
Dennis,
right.
Just one more question about the Parisi application. The
Mhm.
engineer going forward with that application?
They will be submitting a brand new application. Somewhere along the line, the current application will be withdrawn or has been withdrawn. Deborah, what's the status of that?
They withdrew. So
They
they've
did
submitted a brand new application that will be renumbered. And it is my understanding that once an engineer will be hired, we will retain them early for the planning board to review Parisi.
Okay, so they will be on board for the December 9th?
That is the current plan, yes. It's the
Okay,
current
okay,
plan.
that
Mhm.
makes sense.
Why did you say December 9th? I'm thinking December 14th.
Oh,
Okay,
December.
I had a couple dates written down, just numbers. I didn't have the month, so.
I think,
Yeah,
I think it is December 14th, yeah.
The 14th, okay. But
Yep, December 14th.
then they'll be on board, the new engineer, whoever it is, will be on board for that. Okay.
Well, they'll have 5 weeks from the selection, yes. Any other questions about calendar? All right, then let's move right on to our favorite topic, meeting minutes. I assume everyone received these, printed them and read them thoroughly and marked them up. We have August 10th. Are there any comments about the minutes of August 10th?
Nope.
Everyone here is eligible to vote. Can I have a motion to accept and adopt these minutes?
Motion to accept as written.
It looks like to
Second,
second it.
all in favor? Aye,
Right.
raise your hands, fine. Next, we have the August 10th executive session. That was that was just a quickie. To set up the RFP. Any questions about that? Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Next, we have August 17th. That was a joint meeting with the zoning board. And only Mr. Jones, Mr. Malinowski, and Ms. Dill are eligible to vote because they were the only ones there. Also, attached to that is the executive session minutes. Since this meeting was only called for the purpose of going into executive session, let's take both of those at the same time.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of those who are eligible?
Aye.
Thank you. Next, we have September 14. And I would like to comment on item number 7, and I would like to hold this for adoption at a later date. Item number 7 is the resolution to appoint a board attorney for the remainder of this year, except there's no resolution in the minutes, there's no date, there isn't even the name of the attorney that we are appointing. And I would like to see that resolution inserted in the minutes. We spend a half a page inserting the resolution to go into executive session. I think we can insert the resolution to appoint an attorney.
Okay,
Thank you. I'll just set that aside for now. September 28th. Any comments,
Just a minor comment on the 28th, very minor.
please?
Dennis, just, I was going to say on the September 14th, can we just sort of vote on just as it is written and then add in the resolutions? I don't have to look at it again, or?
No, I don't see any reason to do that. I'd like to see the complete
Okay.
document that we're going to approve,
Okay.
especially since none of us can remember the exact wording of that resolution.
That's certainly true. Yeah, the resolution is different to the actual minutes, but anyhow, that's fine. Number 8, just a minor word spelling.
no,
On the
wait,
second
number,
paragraph,
I'm sorry, wait, David, number 8 in the meeting's minutes from
September-
September 14th or September 28th?
28, sorry.
Okay, sorry, number 8, go ahead then, sorry.
That's okay, minor word spelling. Second paragraph, it says at the end, Vice Chairman Jones volunteered and was accepted. It probably should be accepted.
Oh, yeah, good catch.
Accepted with an A.
Just, yeah, that's all. Everything else is fine.
Thank you.
Okay.
Can I have a resolution to approve the minutes of September 28th as amended?
So moved as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
October 12. We have a joint meeting and an executive session. In fact, the entire meeting was an executive session. And in the executive session minutes, paragraph 2, would you please add the words for 2022 at the end of that sentence?
Sure.
Because right now it's not clear in the minutes just why and what.
Understood.
Okay, October 12th, regular joint meeting and executive session together. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And we ran out of minutes.
Do we need to go back to the 14th of September?
At the next meeting,
Roger that.
when we see it again.
Do you want me to send it to you for the end of this one? I could do it right now and resend it.
No. Let's. I like that the things that we vote on are memorialized in writing with plenty of time for the board members to read them. I don't like to rush things.
Understood.
At this point, we can go into a discussion of Valley Road element of the master plan. Some loose ends from the meeting in August that we didn't get to. The reason that we are going back to Valley Road is because I sent out a week ago a request for the other open questions someone to, the individual members who volunteered to write those, for at least one of them to ship it to me, and no one did. So I had to go back to what I knew, which was the Valley Road element. I urge those of you who committed in June to write the other sections for discussion. I urge you to have them ready for the next time we have a chance to discuss master plan. That might be December 14th. That might be next year. I cannot know for sure, but please get your thoughts on paper and have them ready. And now, for those of you who have printed out and are ready to go with the Valley Downtown Business District, I will entertain comments for any of the changes that were made on page 1. The only change of significance is that I took out the sentence that we've been carrying for 25 years, which talked about it unattractive, unharmonious, and replaced it with a shorter sentence that just said eclectic.
That's fine.
On page,
Dennis,
yes,
Dennis, sorry to interrupt. This is minor point, and it's not one of the words you changed, but because it runs on now, eclectic's fine. The most modern structures are 3 banks, 3. I just question the word modern. Are you're talking in terms of time as opposed to appearance, I presume there?
I'm
Most
talking
modern
about
structures.
constructed since the last master plan was my
Yeah.
benchmark.
Not to quibble on words, but because we were talking about styles before, can you just the most recent structures perhaps rather than modern, just so you don't confuse
Yes,
modernist as a style as opposed to modern as a time. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes.
Thank you, Dennis. Just minor.
I
Just
think
'cause you
we're down,
changed the word
I
a little
think we're
bit
now
before.
down to 2 banks. Bank of America closed.
It's still a bank building structure.
Okay.
Right. That's fine.
And yes, I thought about that. I also had a very hard time locating the 2 office buildings that I had written in August. And you will have a very hard time locating them also.
Valley?
Anyone want to try?
I mean, just as far as the numbers, my only comment would be, why not just say it's a mix of those types of uses and not get into the numbers necessarily?
Right.
Well, I was trying to point out that that almost everything there is older than that, and give slight credit to the newer structures. And I'm still waiting for someone to tell me where the 2 office buildings are.
I have no idea.
Valley? Are they on Valley or behind Valley?
They're in the Valley commercial zone.
They're behind.
No,
I assume behind.
no, in the zone.
I mean, there's offices on like the 2nd floor of that newer building next to Exxon, right? Like, is that,
No,
like where Dr. Rossi's chiropractor is and that?
yeah, yeah. I'm talking
Like
office
solely an office building?
That's a retail building. I'm talking office buildings.
The old
Buildings
toy store
designed, buildings purpose-built as offices, 100%.
In Valley? Give us a clue, north or south side?
Okay, everybody give up. One is the Golden Office Building at Poplar and Bay.
So it's behind Valley. I said it's behind Valley. I was going to say Golden.
And the other is the daycare center next to the bike shop, which was originally built and
Uh,
purposed as an office building, but it never quite got there. But it's supposed to be an office building.
mhm.
And I note your change here at line 18, David, or was it, whose change
18,
was
yeah.
it? Don.
It doesn't know. 18. Line.
Page 2.
This is just a minor point. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Dennis. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, please. I interrupted you.
At line 58, there was some question about need to be replaced, and I broke that apart into 2 paragraphs so that the repurposing of existing buildings stood alone and buildings that had to be physically replaced stood alone in a separate paragraph, just to clarify that shorthand from the previous draft.
That's fine. Actually, my point was actually on line 58. Just a minor point, maybe. You say the building is viable but vacant, then the use/tenant must be replaced. If it's vacant, can it have a tenant? And
Well, the elephant in the room on that one is Valley Mall, which has a lot of vacant spaces.
yeah, but it says the use/tenant must be replaced. I'm just trying to
Well,
figure out how those two.
it was either the use or the tenant. Actually both. But at Valley Mall, they've been putting in a lot of new uses in place of the old brick and mortar retail. And of course, that brings with it new tenants. I suggest how that should be reworded.
But it's just the use of the word but vacant and then tenant. I can understand use, but I still just trying to get over that little mind hurdle. If the building is viable, and even in the whole sentence, is viable but vacant, it must be replaced. Is that what we really want to say here? It must be replaced, the building?
No, the use or
No, the
tenant
use,
must be
tenant.
replaced.
If the building is viable, right, and the use tenant. Why would the use be replaced then?
Well, because the old use, again, in the case of Valley Mall, the old use was fundamental retail, and the new uses are basically services. So it's
Yeah,
a different use, permitted, but nonetheless, it's a replacement of the old use.
So you're saying
Yeah,
in this case, the condition of the building structurally, et cetera, is viable? And
Yes.
you're repurposing the building.
I would use
Yeah.
those words.
Yeah, because I think just the vagueness of viable might be, what does that mean? What's the definition of viable? Are we saying structurally viable, condition viable?
right.
Well, in the paragraph above, due to age, bulk violation, energy efficiency, or purpose-built design.
That sentence, first sentence on row 54, are you trying to say cannot or can? Few structures in this zone can be repurposed due to age or cannot be repurposed due to age?
Few of them can be repurposed due to one of those factors. For example, the car wash can't be repurposed for any other purpose, simply because of its specific design as a car wash building. I dare say that Valley Mall itself could not be repurposed for anything other than a shopping mall.
Can be repurposed due to age, bulk violations, energy efficiency.
If
Yeah,
you,
that
if you
sounds
can,
positive, negative as I'm reading that.
if you consider the block that contains the diner, there are 3 residence structures in that block, old farmhouses that have in fact been repurposed. One is a law office, one is a beauty salon, and one is a private school, Uncommon Thread. That's my idea of repurposing, is to take a house and make something else out of it. And in fact, during the discussions on Main Avenue, Committeeman Verliza spent a good deal of time expounding conversion of residences. That's not the only repurposing. And I'm, the pizza parlor next to ShopRite was knocked down and repurposed as a salon.
Yeah, but it was zoned for a restaurant originally.
Yeah,
Right? They wanted to do a restaurant. I just quibble over the words repurposing, use of tenant and stuff. I think we're probably trying to be too forceful in some ways and trying to say too much, when who knows? I mean, a few structures can be repurposed. Who's to say that somebody can't? I'm not sure that's true.
It just can be repurposed due to age. It starts off in one direction and heads you off in a different direction.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
I mean, what are we trying to say there? Are we saying that there are a few structures that can be repurposed, full stop?
Yes.
Others will have issues with age. The ones that cannot be are due to their age. What else did we say there? Lack of energy efficiency. So you got to have a positive sentence then followed by examples of a negative sentence.
Yeah. Good point. That's a good way to clarify it. Thank you.
And
I'll
could
break
you
that up.
incorporate the flood
I put
damage?
a full stop
into
at the
that?
end of that repurpose, leave that as the positive sentence, and then follow it up with examples of what are those that are negative.
Got it.
Because bulk violations, I mean, it's kind of flip-flop.
Got it.
And you can
Thank you.
include the flood damage in that sentence also, so it's not a separate standalone sentence.
Yeah, flood damage. We've got a couple of examples of flood damage. 2 of them were demolitions at the corner of Main and Valley.
Yeah, the haunted house.
And the Paulie's Pizza was a complete demolition and rebuild due to flood damage to the foundation.
Maybe there we say older structures in particularly those with flood damage may need to be evaluated for demolition and replacement.
Got it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And at the,
Dennis, sorry, no, just for a moment. I just question how many actually fit into these categories. A few structures can be repurposed. Is that negative or, I'm going not from this, but is that true?
well, the thermoplastic
And,
buildings, can't be
that's in the
really be
redevelopment zone.
repurposed.
That's in the redevelopment zone, so I'll keep that out, just
I think
outside
what
the
that
area for a minute.
sentence is saying is in that zone, there's very few options for. There's a very small inventory of buildings that can be repurposed.
Yes.
Yeah, but it just sounds fine, but then it sounds like it's all really bad, as opposed to, I think people, I try to think of how many buildings there are. Yeah, there's 1 or 2 nobody particularly cares for, I'm sure, but generally, it's not as if the diner's bad or the Common Thread is bad or even the banks are bad or,
No, but
Burger
across the
King's
street,
bad.
you've got a couple of buildings that are outside of the redevelopment zone that are disheveled. I
Well,
think the
not
one
only
right
That's
that,
fine.
for example, the diner can't be repurposed as anything other than a diner. The funeral home can't be repurposed for anything other than a funeral home, just because
Car
of
wash
the way
can
they're
be
built.
The building next
but
to it.
Again,
can be
and maybe
repurposed.
I'm just going back over what you guys were talking about negative and positive. That's not necessarily negative, right? Who? Like,
It's a
we've got the
statement of
diner.
fact.
That. Yeah, the diner should be those. They're specialty built buildings for specific purposes, e.g. the diner, right?
And the banks, for example,
Right,
are
but
Yeah,
but
so-
they're being identified as limiting factors. Let's keep in mind the section we're in. These are limiting factors to being able to pivot to different market-driven opportunities.
Oh,
but
wait,
then why-
wait a minute, wait a minute.
I question them being limiting then.
Because you're in a
I
section
think they're
called limiting
positives.
factors.
Pivot to other
and-
market-driven opportunities. Excellent.
But again, and that's, are we saying the diner, because it's specifically built as a diner, is a bad thing?
No, I'm just
Then-
observing
then-
that it is not capable. And if dining turns out to go the way of brick and mortar retail, then that building will be obsolete
Yeah,
because there's nothing else you can do with it.
We might be building
Then
more
I was-
diners.
And look, I've seen in other towns where a diner was taken down and they put up a CVS pharmacy.
Yes, but that's taken down. That's a
Yeah,
demolished,
yeah, that's not a repurpose.
right?
Correct.
And we
Um,
have a
there's-
very obvious.
There's several, the one thing I wanted to chime in, I think maybe to David's point, there's several examples around the state now of repurposing old gasoline service stations to some very interesting, we have an example of that in Marysville with the Mountain Bistro restaurant now in a repurposed building that was a former service station. So, you know, we do need to be a little careful. People can be creative sometimes with some of these structures.
And
But I
the
just don't,
biggest, most obvious thing on Valley Road right now is the Bank of America building. Can
Yeah.
that be repurposed for anything other than a bank?
Yes.
don't know.
I think it could become a restaurant. Right.
Yeah, it's a nice sized plot. But the only point really is, it just sounds overly negative, as opposed to saying there's things like there's a number of specifically built for purpose buildings, right? That basically add character to the town, right? So maybe, I don't know how much why that's a limiting factor, but that happens in any town. I'm sure they've got a lot of purpose-built buildings. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, the flooding obviously is important. We know we've got thermoplastics, and there's a couple of other buildings that I'm sure we could pick upon that are not particularly attractive, and we would like to see them changed.
Well,
some of the
there's
others-
there's Mike's Music, which in fact is currently got an
There you go.
application to repurpose it as a
Right.
restaurant.
Right. So I was just the wordsmith. I hate, but it's just trying to give it a different vibe on what we're trying to. Sure, there's limiting factors.
Well, I think the whole section, the way I
But
read
not-
it, is all we're trying to do is identify, and I think it's done really well with some of the tweaks to the language. We're trying to identify the limiting. That's it. And I think you have 3 limiting factors that you're identifying: the flooding,
Flooding, right.
the purposed or the deteriorated buildings that may be a limiting factor, and then the tenant issue.
Fine, but
Thank
those
you.
are not.
Thank you.
John, those are very specific. These are more general. I don't mind the specifics that you just mentioned, right? there's a few old buildings.
Right. Well,
Right.
that's what we're
And there's a
saying.
few-
That's why we took out very. So it's really saying
Mm-hmm.
few of these structures, and maybe it's a few structures.
No,
in
no,
the
no, no. But
zone.
it says few of these structures can be repurposed. That's different. Saying there are a few old buildings.
No,
Few of
it
the buildings
doesn't
can-
say old. It just says few can be repurposed because they're custom built for a
Right.
particular application. The mall is over 50 years
Perfect.
old, but everything in it can be repurposed for new tenants as long as they are mall type tenants.
Right. So the implication is there are other and more plentiful availability buildings that can be repurposed. Right? I mean, isn't that the implication here? We're saying few of these structures can be repurposed.
Again,
Yeah.
I go back to thermoplastics. Actually,
Fine.
thermoplastics could be repurposed, and at one time there was a preliminary proposal to build a factory condominium in one of those buildings. It went away with the development zone, which kind of put a damper on stuff. But maybe repurposing is a word that needs more definition. It's not just moving in a new tenant, it's actually converting the building to another use. For example, the gas station at Myersville Circle, the old
Mhm.
Dom's, was a
Right.
genuine repurposing.
Right.
And
The
if
way
a
it
Again,
bank,
starts out with few structures, I think that's where you're not getting that there are a lot that can be repurposed, but by saying few structures.
well, a new structure is not a repurposing.
No,
Because
I
the old,
understand that. If it said something like there aren't many structures in this zone that can be repurposed.
yeah, I think
would
that,
leave-
well,
That would leave it open that there are quite a few that can be repurposed. Or there
That's-
are some that can be.
it, at line 54, it says few structures in this zone can be repurposed, period. I think that's almost what you said.
Mm-hmm.
I would just talk about the structures that are gonna have a hard time being repurposed in this section of limiting factors versus the ones that can be repurposed. Maybe.
Yeah,
Well,
I
that
think
goes,
you're right.
that goes to the next, that goes to
Right,
the next
exactly.
paragraph. If the building is viable but vacant,
Yep.
can't put everything in the same paragraph.
Yeah, because I think you have three separate points and you want to
Mhm.
keep those distinct. Because I did too, try to combine the second and third paragraph, but you're really saying two different things.
Yeah, they were combined as one sentence, which I
Right.
have now grayed out
Right,
in the expansion.
yeah.
And at the bottom of the page, I took out multifamily residential. Because no one seems to feel at this point that multifamily residential would fit in the zone. Because it would crowd out commercial development. I did leave special residential uses, and that is, we expound on that in the next couple sentences.
Just help me back again with the tenant must be replaced. If it's viable, vacant, then the use tenant must be replaced.
Yeah, I got that circled.
Yeah.
I'll work on that.
Okay, good. Thank you, Dennis. And I was just trying to make sure your positives are positives. But it's not
Yes.
a bad thing that they are purpose-built design. That's my only point.
Well, they are-
That's not necessarily a bad thing.
As Don pointed out, this whole section is labeled limiting factors, and limiting factors are by their nature negative. That's
Right.
why they're limiting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But again, yeah, you know my point.
Next page, recommendations. This sentence that I've added, the new sentence at line 73, is a rather giant leap. And it goes to the point that Brendan brought up at the last time we talked about this, is essentially the marketplace will dictate. And we ought to broaden it as much as possible to support the market.
Well, there is a very specific point as well here that I would like to get to at some point when we come to the detail. But, you know, things like Jaeger lumber, right? Currently not permitted. They have to jump through hoops to get any approvals or any, remember a couple of years ago? So I just want to make sure we do tackle that and we do consider expanding here the commercial uses as you mentioned.
Well, that's under action plan.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I like the sentence. I like the addition.
Yeah, definitely want to expand.
Well, let's look at the action plans then.
How about just not a liberal, expanded list of permitted uses? Just expanded use of permitted uses rather than using the word liberal.
What line are you at?
Sorry, it's
73.
73.
Well,
73.
again, that the recommendation, the generic recommendation is that we open up Valley Mall more. The action plan, the specific actions are start at line 77, and much of that section is new.
No, main point is just the word liberal, Dennis, in 973. Permit a more liberal list of permitted commercial uses. So consider expanded list of permitted uses.
Dennis, could you give me a brief definition of what a special aggregate residential use would be?
Yes. That would be at line, oh, it's in here
I know it's
somewhere.
73 and 74, but what is a special aggregate residential use?
Yeah, it's in here somewhere. Give me a chance to find it.
Oh, okay.
Oh, line 83.
Long-term congregate.
So all of these are considered special aggregate residential uses?
Well, I invented that word. The whole purpose of this was to take out multifamily residential and leave the other kinds of residential uses.
Mm-hmm.
Since they will be, all of these will be good taxpayers and won't put much strain on the neighborhood.
So Dennis, did you mean to exclude aggregate in line 66 out of your special residential uses, or
Mm-hmm.
just to be consistent?
Oh, just a matter of timing.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to make sure we don't, because we have special residential uses and then special aggregate residential uses.
Oh, yeah, I could use the same phraseology in both places. You want
Yeah.
the word aggregate in or out?
Out. Doesn't
Okay,
mean
out.
Yeah, I'd say probably out. I think that.
Doesn't mean anything.
So it comes out at line 73.
Right.
Now we have the first one of these on the drawing board. And this does not prejudice, and I hope I said that somewhere, this does not, yeah, 86, line 86. This does not prejudice mixed use development, residential over commercial.
With the ground floor.
There's one of
Prohibition.
there's one of these pending on Plainfield Road. And of course, the classic in town is the Angie's building in Gillette.
Mhm.
And the expectation was that the thermoplastics redevelopment zone would also be mixed use with residential over commercial, but that's not going to happen.
Do we really
And-
want some of these, Dennis?
Say again?
Sorry. No, carry on, please. I interrupt you. Please, sorry, carry on.
The thermoplastics example you just mentioned, is that as a result of the flooding
Yes,
and the egress issues?
that will wind up, that area will wind up being developed as commercial only.
Mhm.
86, line 86 looks like, right, okay, right. Is that what we said? Yeah. Ground floor, first floor, right?
Yeah, the
But some of these other-
the clarification here, David, is that the language is extremely convoluted in the ordinance. The ordinance says
Right,
it's prohibited except prohibited. It's a prohibited use on the first floor only.
yeah.
And
With
that
double
was
negatives.
a late starter language kludge, which we need to straighten out.
Yeah, so definitely, 86 looks good to me personally. But some of the other stuff I think we need to just walk through.
And just back to line 81, 82, for light manufacturing, when associated with an on-premise showroom, would that be something that's manufactured in the back? You make widgets in the back, sell them in the front?
Yeah,
what
the
your
last
thoughts are?
time we talked about this, we were talking about something like a custom furniture builder
Okay, okay,
Mhm.
who would have a
Good.
light carpentry shop in the back.
right.
And I don't
right.
know how you define light. I'm sorry to say, I don't know what a light carpentry shop is as opposed to a thermoplastics type factory.
And with the next line,
I mean,
my concerns are we exposing ourselves to like a long-term budget hotel?
Yeah.
They have a tendency to turn into homeless shelters. And, assisted living, are we looking to invite like a drug rehab center in our downtown area? Could that be a concern?
Well, we do have a couple of drug rehabs in town. And could an assisted living facility, no, assisted living facilities charge upwards of $200 a day. I've been
No, I
in
mean,
that.
the long-term budget hotels is,
Long-term budget hotel. I'm thinking about the businessman who has to spend 2 months in central New Jersey and
Yeah,
doesn't want to pay $150 a night for a swimming pool.
Right.
Yeah,
Like
I don't think we
extended,
need to.
you're talking about the extended
Extended
stay,
stay.
like the Marriott extended
Yeah, it's
stay places, those types of
Right.
almost residential,
Spring Hill Suites.
right?
Yeah, extended stay. Thank you. Those
Yeah.
are the words I couldn't find the other
Yeah.
night.
But to be honest, why we open? We only just recently with the Valley Road redefined some of these uses, and we spent time not to make it too broad or too big. I'm not sure why we're reopening that, to be honest.
Well,
The whole,
the recommendation at line 73 is that we do change horses and make it too big.
I don't think we should. We're not saying that. We're not saying that. You don't say make it too big there in 73. You're only saying that in lines 83 and stuff.
What I'm
Small
suggesting,
hotels, I don't know, 80, liberalize the size restrictions for small hotels, movie. Why are we doing that? I
well,
question all
the
that.
small hotel as defined in the current ordinance is 10 rooms or less.
Right, yeah.
And there's
fine,
that's
great.
probably not an economically viable build. It was this started out, that particular thing started out as a B&B. But then
Yeah.
it evolved into the fact that there really are no large mansions on Valley Road that are suitable for converting to a B&B. So let's allow someone to build a small hotel on the size of a B&B. But a 10-unit hotel is not economically viable, or at least it's very pricey. So
Do we really want these type of buildings here, movie theaters? Does anybody actually really want a movie theater in town?
well,
Raise your hand if you do.
once again, the movie theater is limited to 2 screens. And
I don't,
if we're going to allow movie theaters, then let's take out the 2-screen restriction. If you don't want to allow movie theaters, then we'll take it out completely.
yeah, who wants movie
Yeah.
theater? Does anybody want a movie theater in town on Valley
I
Road?
think, though, I think we've got to stay focused on, are we conceptually in agreement that we're going to more, using Dennis's term, liberally allow the market to dictate what really creates our economically viable Valley Road district? Or are we going to try to hear that?
Thank
But
you,
we
Don.
try to do, but we try to do that through uses, right? So I don't think we should liberalize.
Between 2008, the 2020 visions exercise, and 2016, we were back and forth, and every time we went back and forth, the result was more restrictions on what we would allow on Valley Road. And what I'm suggesting is that now is the time to refocus and stop talking about restriction of uses and broaden it. And either we agree with that or we don't.
I think we're all in
Nobody's
agreement that we
disagreeing.
don't want to recreate Route 22 through our town. okay?
Correct. Or
Right, well,
Berkeley
that's
Heights.
part of the issue though, Don. I don't think we can recreate Route 22 because you're not going to get big hotels without Route 22 or a 78 or a Parkway. And you're not going to get big movie theaters without major feeder roads to get people in and out. So I think some of the ideas are good, but I think some of the examples are just pipe dreams. First of all, nobody's building, I don't see 10-screen movie theaters being built anymore with all the streaming that's becoming so popular now. So I think
You also
the
have
thoughts
to
are
remember,
good, but the examples might not be the best.
Right.
Right. I agree with that.
you have to
agree.
remember that Route 22 was built as a brand new highway in the 40s and 50s. And it was surrounded by huge lots, which are suitable for car dealers and movie theaters and Home Depots. And Valley Road is almost 200 years old. It's a 2-lane road and it's not surrounded by huge lots. So a lot of these, it won't look like Route 22. It can't possibly go that way. And that's a reality. I think the Route 22 argument has to do with signage. And the fact of the matter is signage is out of control on Valley Road anyway. But that's another matter. That's the next goal.
But Dennis, to the point, I don't think these examples are good examples, right? Why do we have to even talk about some of these things? Fine about the most, and I'll go back to an earlier comment, which I don't see here. We should be looking at pre-existing uses that are not permitted and see if we want to help make those permitted. Example, Jaeger lumber, right? I think we should be doing that exercise, and we have done that exercise previously, by the way, right? And then we can start talking about expanding use and liberalize, or whatever word you want to use.
But that particular line gives us the option of actually prohibiting movie theaters as opposed to allowing large size movie theaters. I don't want to go for prohibiting anything because that runs counter to the liberalization.
No, I'm not saying prohibit. I didn't say prohibit. I said, why even talk about it where we have it right now at 2 screens or 10 rooms? Why does anybody think that's bad? And if somebody wants to come in with something bigger, great, let them come before the planning board. But
no, they'd have to go to the zoning board. That'd be useful.
Yeah, I know. But what about the Jaeger lumbers and those? I want to see, where's the exercise here to prompt that discussion?
Well, the lumber yards are specifically prohibited. Fortunately, Jaeger lumber predates that. So that's a
Right.
grandfathered use.
Yeah, but Dennis, I will quote a little bit what happened when they tried to expand out and the hoops they had to jump through in our town, as opposed to the, I assume, more streamlined process in Madison and elsewhere to do similar things. We're hurting a good business. I'd like to incorporate that here somewhere. So I think we should be evaluating, perhaps the words evaluating, existing uses specifically prohibited and determine whether they should be permitted. It doesn't mean that everyone, doesn't mean all the gas stations, which are prohibited, right? But we should be.
If we were to
not
change lumberyard from a prohibited use to a permitted use, then any expansion of Jaeger lumber would be much easier. And
Perfect.
I go along with that.
Yeah, why not?
Perfect. They're a good corporate town citizen, right? Who's better than Jaeger lumber? So just my only point there is just in general to say, let's reevaluate prohibited uses and determine whether an existing use that is prohibited could be made permitted. And then obviously, as you're going here, a bit more let's expand or reevaluate the uses without giving too many examples. Because I think we're just going to trip over ourselves with these examples. Does that make sense? Or, I mean, the commercial stuff, residential stuff is good. You know, the first floor, excellent. That's very specific and good. But when we get into these examples, we're just going to, or let us all think a little bit about this, because this is a fundamental piece of the whole Valley Road, right?
Can anyone hear me? Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm
now
having
Dennis,
I'm having a little mic trouble here. The unique thing about the Valley Road element that we passed in 2017 is that it does have an extensive list of permitted and prohibited uses. And that's the only area in town, the only zone in town that has a list of uses tacked into the master plan. All the other zones, the village zones, have uses only in the ordinance, but not in the master plan. Yolanta was of the belief that we should have uses, permitted uses for every zone listed in the master plan. And I have not attempted to do that, but we could, if that's the consensus.
I think it's an interesting conversation. I think it's something we all need to reflect a little bit more deeply on, that very specific subject, uses. Right. Again, I'd like to see reevaluation. Let's not prohibit some people that are good and let's make them permitted. I think that's an action plan item. And then if we want to think about, rather than, sorry, Dennis, go ahead.
David, what I don't want to do is kick the can down the road. We've waited 30 years. We're not going to recommend that someone later on evaluate uses. If their evaluation of uses is required, let's do it now. Let's get it in this master plan.
All right, evaluation of uses, right? As I say, Jaeger lumber. What do you want to, how more specific can I get?
Well, we don't have to touch Jaeger lumber because that use is grandfathered.
But Dennis, I'll make my point again. I would distinctly recall, and Deb can chime in here perhaps, distinctly recall their grievances against this town because they wanted to do similar work in other towns and it was a piece of cake versus this town. That's the reputation that then lingers and leaves a bad taste, in my mind, of a good township citizen. So I would disagree with.
The specifics about Jaeger lumber were that they were expanding a non-conforming use.
And they were expanding outside the Valley Business Zone. As I recall, the next lot behind that they wanted to deal with was not in the Valley Zone.
Fine, but don't, because they're prohibited, hurt them. All I'm saying is just reevaluate that type of situation. If they want to expand it above and beyond, fine, that's good. Then come before the board and go through the hoops as necessary. But don't make it more painful to them just because they're prohibited.
Well, Yolanta would like us to take out all prohibited uses and fall back on the rule that if it's not permitted, it's automatically prohibited. That means we've got to be a lot smarter about the permitted uses that we list.
Correct.
And that list is currently in the Valley element of the master plan, and that list can be expanded and modified. And I have not attempted to tackle that, but anyone who'd like to do that as a sub-project is welcome to.
I think that's something we should be focusing on rather than just abstract things like expanding hotels and movie theaters when they don't exist. It's not as practical. Well, the point is there's a number of different action plan items. That's my point.
Yeah, I recognize that both of those are not likely to happen. But on the other hand, the permission that we grant in the element and in the ordinance, the permission that we grant is in fact a restriction. And we can either take out the use entirely because we don't think it's likely to happen, or we can remove the prohibition because that just sounds negative, even though we expect that nobody's ever going to want to build a 3-screen movie theater. Of course,
So
the
that's what I
elephant
think
in the elephant in the room here is all the automotive uses, which are all prohibited. And are we ever going to just make them permitted in this zone or in any other zone?
So we could either spend the time, because this is very specific stuff and very important stuff, right? It's either you spend the time here to detail this in a bit more so, or you just say the vision is to reevaluate the existing uses, consider expansion of use, consider whatever points here as well.
Tell you what I'm going to do, because we could debate this all night. Let me just give the list of permitted and prohibited uses to Liz and ask her to come up with something that makes sense.
Fine.
Okay.
That'd be good.
Done.
That'd be good. That'd be good. That'd be helpful. Thank you.
Now let us please move off of goal number 1 and 2, which we've already discussed, and move on to goal number 3, which we have not discussed. On page 4, maximize economic return by maximizing building coverage. The problem with Valley Road is that everybody's got to provide their own parking, and parking for a 1-story building, parking eats up 2/3 of your lot coverage. For a 2-story building, it eats up 80% of your lot coverage based on the current parking rules. And so if you're going to expand the building, if you're going to encourage economic viability, you want to allow expanded building, which means you got to devote less space to parking. As an example, I've also said, this is only parking. Look at the Santander Bank building. Look at the PNC Bank building. Count the number of cars in the parking lot. It's worse than the Gillette train station. Nobody banks in person anymore, or very few do, and yet the bank buildings are clobbered with huge parking restrictions.
Well, PNC Bank no longer does any retail inside.
And Bank of America stopped that about almost a year before they closed for good. They only had the ATM.
And Chase does as well. That's limited their public services.
That's right. Chase doesn't do any retail banking anymore.
No.
In fact, who does?
Well, the trend was, the trend with the banks was footprints, they're all going to the kiosk and the much smaller infrastructure type, almost drive-through type servicing. That's it.
And everything's gone virtual and electronic.
Yeah,
right?
exactly, because
So-
people are taking a photograph of their check and depositing it from their phone for crying out
Right.
loud.
And if they want to talk to
Mhm.
somebody, they just do it right online.
So I think the bricks and mortar bank thing is shrinking big time and will continue to shrink.
Agreed. But that means we've got to revisit parking. And in fact, if you took the parking restrictions off of the, at least the Santander Bank, for example, there might be more development on that site.
Mhm.
But here's the other thing. I fully agree with the parking that we do need to do that and reduce it. But the other thing is that during these times, a lot of the restaurants and stuff have been using that space for outdoor dining, etc. So I'd like to consider how we can encourage or support more outdoor dining.
Why don't we just build
I
a
just
parking
mentioned that.
garage?
Love to.
Brendan, go ahead.
A parking garage? Just
Yep.
encourage have that built somewhere. That takes away a lot of it.
Yeah.
Or if
Well,
not
you-
a parking
I
garage,
think-
maybe at least parking underneath the buildings.
Yeah.
Would the township consider public parking, additional public parking, because on Valley Road somewhere?
I would.
I think of behind the diner in particular, because we try to make that more densely dense area, for want of a better word, 70% or whatever it was. So I would love to see public parking there. Make
The
it
problem that I see with the public parking is location because of the earlier issue with how spread out our district is. You know, the
But then
different
it-
businesses. I mean,
Right,
you know, it's hard. People just aren't gonna walk very far to get, you know, it's not like
But the-
Summit where you can build a parking garage and then have a walkable commercial district right there.
Right, but Don, we try to make that area around the diner become something more like that.
Yeah,
So always in my mind, back of my mind has been, if we go down that route or path, and ultimately maybe there becomes more the town square-y type feel there, but public parking is going to be an important part of that.
gotcha.
So,
So
yes,
you're
for me-
saying to build something like that in a designated area, kind of the Field of Dreams model, build it and they will come. In regards to attracting commercial development, then clustered where you've designated parking and being able to reduce the parking restrictions that are affecting the businesses. Yeah.
Fundamentally, yes. Yes, exactly right. That means public investment,
I got it.
and specifically around that area.
Specifically, you got to tell me where, and we'll put it in the master plan.
Well, I'd say, didn't we have the overlay zone? I haven't got it in front of me. Didn't we have an overlay zone around the dine? I just used the dine as a center point there, but wasn't there an overlay zone?
Yes,
what do we call it again?
the Passaic Valley Overlay Zone, which was created in a absolutely frenzied meeting of the planning board with no prior thought, no prior research. A lot of people looking at their computers, looking at the Google Earth, trying to figure out what we were talking about. And the upshot of the overlay zone was we would allow a greater lot coverage in that zone on that block than on the rest of it. The problem is all the buildings in that area were already at maximum lot coverage or were constrained by wetlands in the rear and couldn't expand to the lot coverage that we set up. So that overlay zone is essentially useless.
However, if you took away some of the parking requirements, move them into public parking in that zone, and I would just generalize that zone overlay, then that at least gives some direction as to where public parking could go, how big it is, right? So you ask for specifics. I'd say within that zone, encourage public parking to enable all the benefits that you just went through with,
That would require
more
acquiring,
consolidation.
that would require acquiring property.
Sure,
And
that's gonna cost money.
what would you suggest?
So I think you're talking about right at the end of Bay Street. Is that?
Around
so-
that area, yeah.
So right behind the diner, because Bay Street just terminates, who owns all that land behind the diner?
Well, there's two wedge-shaped properties. They're only about 50 feet wide at the end of Bay Street. And they're owned by the property owner on Plainfield Road. The problem is if you go east from the diner, you get to Uncommon Thread. And when Uncommon Thread came to the board about 4 or 5 years ago for expansion, it was discovered that most of their backyard is wetland and they were very severely constrained by wetland. So I'm assuming that the wetland extends into those vacant lots in the back.
But public parking, maybe impervious, I don't see why that can't be an opportunity. We don't have to say specifically where, but within that overlay zone, as a suggestion, public parking could be considered.
There's a ton of underutilized not public parking, but parking available. Unfortunately, it's all in the Valley Mall. And
Right.
nobody wants to park there and walk to anywhere. People want to park right where they're going to shop. And I think that's part of the problem.
And
I mean, just
For me-
looking at the map, it makes a lot of sense if we were to go that route. Again, irregardless of the constraints there may be with wetlands, et cetera. But to comp, you just said, Tom, you've got a lot of parking, Valley Mall to hit that district. And then if you were able to set up a parking deck or garage or something to that effect, kind of between the ShopRite and the diner and that whole area, could stimulate that area. It's an interesting idea.
and that's the point. It's stimulation. It's a vision. It's to say we, the town, would like to encourage perhaps where it's high density, more of a walking area, somewhere we can actually stop and so you're not sitting in a parking lot in Valley Road, right? In Valley Mall. But somewhere that actually makes people want to truly stop. And
How about-
hopefully build around that.
How about taking a part of the car wash lot that's left over from the developer and making that into public parking?
That's the trouble is it's alongside of the road.
Right.
It's got to be behind, I suggest, within that block of the overlay zone to make it somewhere you can safely park and safely walk, and who knows what comes up over time. When you've got to start setting that vision.
Well,
It's underutilized. That area is underutilized around.
well, except that area is 100% full of tenants. That block is
Sure, but it's
full
not-
of tenants. There's no vacancies there. And with the exception of the diner, all the other tenants in that block are very low transient volume. You've got salon, you've got a lawyer, you've got the school. They don't have a lot of people going in and out like the diner does.
Right, so build around the diner. So behind the diner, that area, you start to, maybe a coffee shop pops up, or maybe maybe we do have that more of a town square feel develop over time.
Except the diner isn't running out of parking. The diner parking is pretty well utilized.
Mhm.
So who are we
Doesn't say why.
catering to by creating public parking?
The
The
future
idea is how do you
businesses.
set right, how do you set a vision? Go ahead. Sorry.
No. I'm just kind of agree. I think I'm agreeing with both you and Dawn. It's kind of like, if you're if you're kind of shackled by what's there right now, you're not going to do
Right.
anything, right? Because everything's fine. But if you do want to, make that a vital area, then maybe you build some parking lots and maybe you allow, I don't know, maybe one, maybe 3-story buildings, right? Where you have, instead of just having one story, you have 2 stories, right? Of residences above it, right? So that you've got people there, and if people are there, and business is kind of being revitalized and attracted, then that just begets more and more, and it's like, what do you want to do? Do you want to keep it the same way it is right now, or do you want to have something that's a little bit different? And if you do, what is that, and how do you get there? And I think parking's one of the main things. It's if you want to attract people, whether it's to shop or to live, right? You have to have it.
Agree.
Yeah.
There's a very large town-owned lot already on the north side of Valley Road, opposite the Walgreens. But you don't want to build public parking on the wrong side of the road.
No, but I expect public parking on the north side at some point, maybe with when the park, whatever happens to the park, Central Park, right? So you're going to get some public parking, I presume, there. Consider something on the south side, consider it in the overlay zone, because we've already notioned that as somewhere different, and we want to encourage something, as Brendan was saying, encourage stuff, some more, just
It
encourage.
seems like we arrive at this point a lot. I mean, does it make sense? And I'm not trying to kick the can down the road here, but I think we've identified a potential need and something that might help to spur and meet this goal, or one of the goals here in enhancing the business attractiveness to this Valley Road area. Can't we just leave it that this would be looked at and set that as a goal? I mean, we're not going to do that in this meeting, trying to identify where to put the parking deck.
Don, I can't agree with you, because after 25 years of living with a master plan that is just full of, we'll look at this later, I don't want to create a master plan now that might have to last 10 or 20 years that doesn't have specifics in it. If we think that that's a goal, then let's address it. We're not gonna be able to be any smarter on aggregate parking 5 years from now than we have been over the past 25 years. Either it's feasible and is necessary and is a part of the master plan, or it's not.
But I mean, there's another, for me at least, there's another issue, and that's, is this the long hill that floods, or is it the long hill that is somehow free of that particular constraint, right? Because that is I think Valley Road is a different situation whenever, if you look at it with water and without water, and the types of businesses and the types and how vitalized or revitalized it can become. And again, we touched on it the last time, and the more I think about it, the more important I think it is for the master plan. And it's kind of like, let's make the thrust of this master plan more towards the constraints that the township's laboring under right now, and that have seemed to have retarded growth. Let's make this master plan more forward thinking in that regard, and use it as a tool to kind of push things forward.
Brendan is talking about line 51 on page 2. We are ordered by the legislature in statute 40:55D-28.19B2H to include in the land use element a statement of climate vulnerability. And in August, we talked about the nuisance of flooding. without quite knowing that there was a law that said we've got to address it in the land use element. Now we've identified that law, thanks to one of our favorite listeners who sent the citation. And now we've got to address it. Now we've got to write a section on climate vulnerability, and that will override everything in the land use element because it's required by the state.
But you know, Dennis, there, you know, we're kind of the OGs of climate vulnerability in many ways, right? When you think about what we've been suffering through. So, you know, I think it's more than just a statement at this point for us. It's a kind of look at how we want to mitigate it, and you know, a kind of deeper look there, and some recommendation.
Well, the Gladstone branch was not running last night during the rainstorm. This morning around noon or so, Mercer Street and Somerset Street were both coned off because of flooding. It happens. It happens all the time, and we are vulnerable. And as you pointed out in the August meeting, that's going to affect what developers want to do in this town. And I don't think that building public parking, personal opinion, I don't think that building public parking is going to do anything to offset the flooding issue.
Yep, I'm with you on that. That's why I think there's a kind of, you know, as I say, it's a threshold issue. We take a step back, and that's what we deal with in the master plan.
I agree. I think that's where we kind of arrived. That was the epiphany the last time we were together, that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
In the end.
Agree, but that's not the only important thing. Right,
Yeah,
there's a lot of valley roads.
But it's an important thing that the town can control infrastructure standpoint. I mean, a lot of the other things are really market driven, and we're really not going to have that much control over.
It's true.
Well, not necessarily, right? Not if we set the vision a little bit. Maybe some public investment, e.g. public parking, right? And then say, look, this is what we think we want to get to, would like to get to. And we're going to help that by doing a couple of things. What else? What do you think?
You know, I mean, I think I'm with Dawn, right? Where it's all these things are ultimately market driven, because no matter what we come up with, right? If nobody wants to build it, or nobody buys into our vision, it's just empty. You know, it's sheets of paper, right, with something on it. So I think it's kind of, for me, it's more, let's make the place as appealing as possible, so that we can get the interest from various parties, and then use that to kind of shape a vision of, or shape the way the town should look for the next 20, 30 years, however long it might be, because I think those things change as well.
Right, understood. But just again, on the overlay zone where we have different bulk standards, do we want to encourage that? How, you know, you can encourage it through the master plan, right? You can start saying we can do some things with a vision, maybe in a certain area. Now, whether it comes to fruition, well, hopefully it does. Whether it still requires some capital investment by the town, maybe it does, right? I wouldn't want to lose sight of that and just say, well, it's just free for all. We've got no vision. You know, just come and do whatever you want. I mean, we'll do the address the flooding, but
we're talking about a multiple orders of precedence here. First of all, we build public parking, then that means that the individual lots can have less parking on them, and that means that the individual lots can have more building space on them, and that leads to economic viability. Is that the trail you want us to believe in?
I think it's a good trail. And not only believe in, I'd like to see, because again, COVID times has shown us public outdoor dining is good, right? What's going to happen at some point with all the outdoor dining? Well, the hotel, everywhere's got it.
Outdoor dining doesn't work for the winter months. Whatever you do has got to survive 12 months a year, which means indoor dining is the root. Outdoor dining is a seasonal thrill.
Fine, then make it a seasonal thrill, but allow for it, right? Otherwise, you're not going to be successful. Like right now, assume any policing has been lifted at this point in time, right? So at some point we should be addressing it. Fine, make it a temporary building, and in the winter you knock them down and you let the parking come back and enjoy the spots, or you make it a more semi-permanent type of building, as some people have done. I'd hate to lose this opportunity to not encourage outdoor dining, because I think everybody enjoys it. I know I do. And I'd hate to see parking limited, or in fact that the limitation is down to parking, or the fact the only place they can actually build is in parking, on parking, right?
David, I think since you're passionate about this, I think you need to tell us and make a specific proposal in the master plan as to where this parking would be and what it would serve. In other words, how many businesses are within walking distance of the public parking that you propose? Studying it later isn't going to tell us any more than studying it now will tell us.
Well, that's why I say focus on the overlay zone. That area is very defined. It's all walkable in terms of distance. It's not a large area. Where the specific parking is, or how we expand upon some of the concepts we have there if we need to, just to say that this is the area of town. It's above the floodplain, I presume, because it doesn't get flooded up there.
Except behind, in the back it does, because we found that out with Uncommon Thread.
Well, it has wetlands, but does that mean there's wetlands? Yeah, I know. But does it get flooded to the extent that Valley Road does up there? No, it doesn't.
No, you're right.
Right. So I'd like to see a little bit of focus. I guess at the end of the day, Dennis, what I'm truly getting to is a couple of things. One, that area, that overlay zone, I think we should think about what we want that to be, because we created an overlay zone for a purpose. So let's consider that purpose, or expand upon that purpose, and consider how we can address outdoor dining with the notion where you were going, which is reducing restrictions, reducing parking requirements, all for the benefit of the business. So I think we're on the same concept. It's just how we want to express it.
I suppose if you were building a public parking lot for that district, you'd want to put it at the PNC lot, which is right on the intersection. It's up front, there's sidewalks, and it's probably the least utilized property in that block right now. Although PNC might not agree, I don't know what their economics are. But nonetheless, if they've eliminated the teller line, who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, Bank of America closed down because there were too many Bank of America branches within 10 miles of Sterling. Question is does that also apply to PNC? Are they a survivor? Don't know. But that would be an ideal place to build parking, because it's up front. You don't put, would not have to put parking on a dead end street.
So whenever you're thinking about this, like this walkable area, right? What are people walking to and from? Like what? Like, okay, we've got restaurants and outdoor dining. What else? Like if we're thinking about this, what are we trying to attract here, or what do we think we're trying to attract? If we're going to go down this kind of like this more focused area where we say, here's our vision, let's build around it, rather than you know, just like kind of market, you know, make the place amenable to multiple different different uses and let the market forces shape what we can do here. So based on the discussion there, where we have parking somewhere, and we kind of are agreed that we want to have some kind of like parking structure, a deck or whatever it is, or what's attracting the people, where are they walking to, and what are they doing?
I'd like to think, I mean, depends what happens on redevelopment in thermoplastics, so you could do something a bit more there. Central Park depends how that turns out and how many folks that attracts. To walk across the road into something that has, and again, Valley Mall, who knows what's going to happen there, but I think that's a larger subject. So is there a place that you could actually start to think of, and it's right in the center of town, start to think of that type of, whether it's the small coffee shops, whether it becomes a little Christmas market, who knows what, but is it a public building? Is there a little arts center there or something? Is there some other type of anchoring type of activity or building that does bring people, enables them to do the things that you want people to be able to do?
Well, the difficulty with David's proposition is that the south side of Valley Road is pretty well developed right now and really doesn't have the same problems that the north side has of needing to encourage development. We've got vacant lots. We've got underutilized lots. We've got space there to put public parking, and we've also got space for new uses on the north side of the road. And maybe you ought to be focused on the north side of the road.
My only concern about north side is a little bit is that is the traffic and people walking across the road. That's the big for me.
Well, you don't have to walk across the road if we could develop appropriate uses on the north side of the road on all the available properties.
I'm just wondering how many available properties there really are on the north side.
Well, there is, for example, the Elks. There is the vacant lot to the west of Primavera. There's the vacant lot to the east of Walgreens, which is partly owned by the town and partly owned by the Walgreens property owner. There are places, and there's also the car wash lot, and there might be a way to barter off some land there for a different use other than, or in addition to, the assisted living, or maybe for public parking. There's a lot of, there's also the lot at the corner of the power line that's currently a sports shop, which is clearly underutilized.
It's all very linear.
And the Santander Bank, if we reduce parking requirements, the Santander Bank could be developed with a much larger building.
But that's all very linear, Dennis. I'm suggesting a little bit more, something a bit more, we say, condensed. How about this? I know these conversations, I don't want to do multiple meetings either, believe me. We take a look at the overlay zone at least and see what the original purpose for that was, and see how, if we can re-envision or help become a focal point there, and how we can make that perhaps more than what it is right now.
The overlay zone, the 7 properties in that block are all full. They all work. I don't know why we're trying to fix it. And nobody's complaining about a parking shortage there. We need to focus the master plan on the parts of the zone that don't work.
No, the master plan is there also to think about how we can improve the town and get some ideas about what that could be and set the scene for the future. If we don't think it's an area worth focusing on, fine. But I just say I don't think we should give up on that idea or thought until we've all had the time to consider it.
See, the one thing, I mean, I think that's why we've been sitting around here, you know, and David, you know better than all of
Oh
us,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you were part of all the hours and sort of spent and
Mhm.
many others here,
Mhm.
but it's like, you know, to try and decide a vision or you know what uses there should be for different lots or buildings. It you know we're never going to get anywhere. I mean that's why it's taken as long as it has, and we still aren't that really that much further forward. I mean the overlay zone. Well, that was the overlay zone was a bunch of people sitting around one night saying, "Oh, let's do an overlay zone," and they're either here or we've all forgotten what we were thinking about when we had the overlay zone. It's like it just seems if we're kind of continually we're going down this rabbit hole, right? That we've been doing for years, and I just think we need to take more of a different approach, right? A different approach to how we're thinking about this, and maybe think about things more generally rather than in the specifics, because you know it sounds from what Dennis was saying. Hey, we're pretty happy with Valley Road. There's a couple of spots that we might want to change, but that's it. And I think I'm hearing that, well, maybe not. You know, maybe there are, maybe you know, we would like to see a different a different makeup of Valley Road, that people wouldn't be driving around. They would be communing together. They'd be talking. They'd be walking. They'd be doing all these great things, right? That we all you know kind of think a warm and fuzzy feeling about. But if that's the case, then I kind of go back to what we were saying a little while ago. It's just make it, you know, make it amenable to all of these things, and write this generally rather than specifically thinking about coffee shops or indoor dining or outdoor dining. And let's just do something that we all can kind of agree, because it means a little bit there's something different to each of us, and it appeals to us, because otherwise I just don't see any path forward.
Well, I think just to counter a little bit, Brendan, if I might, we said and you suggested as well, some public parking. Just making a suggestion where in that area, right? We know that there may be, whatever happens at Central Park, we could expand public parking. That's not a big discussion point necessarily, just yay or nay, and it's not that many words. We know we've got that area, whether we leave it as is, and because we think we've encouraged it anyhow by calling it overlay, allowing for larger lot coverage and stuff, bulk standards, so we don't necessarily have to say much different to what we've already got. But I do think we need to speak it specifically though on, and as a purpose as well, towards this outdoor dining. I think as a separate subject, outdoor dining. I think hopefully a benefit of the last couple of years. I don't think these are big conversational pieces or lots of, it's just, is that sort of a direction that can be taken? Public parking in the overlay zone. Make sure the vision there is still in rough alignment. Not saying it's got to be coffee shops or anything, but it just enables people to start thinking about it outside market influence, to think about that type of stuff. And then just what do we do with the outdoor dining? Separate subject.
Outdoor dining is fairly liberal in the ordinance right now. Anybody can do it. All you need is parking to support it, and the zoning official can give you a permit. I don't think there's much more we can do to liberalize outdoor dining.
David likes his outdoor dining, so that's a good thing, right, David?
I do. Honestly. I mean, Brendan, you know.
We're going to see David out. We're going to see
say,
David in his parka out there with his.
You could see me at Chilento's underneath last December until they got really caught
Yeah, remind me not to go to breakfast with you, David, in December.
Exactly.
But I would say, Brendan, maybe you could back me up here. This area, it's just the weather's so nice. Apart from a couple of months, maybe a month, and so, it's so generally so nice. why aren't we making use? And that's why there's Stone Hotel outside. Now, the pub gardens in Britain, right? Spend a lot of time with those little town. Anyhow, you get my point. Hopefully, you get
Have
my
any
point.
have any of the restaurants in Valley Mall installed outdoor dining?
Who cares about what rest? Who cares about?
Panera, Starbucks?
But you go past the diner, you go past the Greek, 12 Islands. You go past the Italian, right? You go past Cilento. You go.
Sub Shop, Donuts. Do any of those have outdoor dining?
Oh, by the way, Dunkin' Donuts should, and we should encourage it, because you always see the same guys sitting outside in their cars or whatever and putting up the chairs, sit outside there. So, and this is why we also.
Their business model is what it is, and they haven't seen fit to install a couple of tables outdoor. They've got a grassy area to the north of the building. They could, but they haven't.
Well, why haven't they? Right? Why don't anyhow?
Well, there's no prohibition against it in the ordinance. All they got to do is provide a sketch.
They're pretty much now just an app-driven company where you order on the app and go in. You don't even stand at the counter to order things anymore in Dunkin' Donuts.
Yeah, but you see the same guys. You see the same guys every weekend outside Dunkin' Donuts sitting there. And people are always sitting outside Panera now.
I must say my blood's got thinner since I lived in the UK, so I tend to, as soon as September comes, I tend to skedaddle inside and eat. So
oh, Brendan, come on, come on, get your European come out.
I pulled into a McDonald's and wanted to get a hamburger at the drive-thru, and there was no menu board, there was no loudspeaker. I pulled up to the window and there was a sign that said, place your order on the app. I couldn't order ad hoc by driving through. So they don't need outdoor dining because they don't want you to stay there. They want you to order on the app and drive away.
Yes, but fine. We shouldn't restrict, or we should help people. If they want to do outdoor dining, let them put outdoor dining. Obviously, there's been a demand, else they wouldn't be doing it. They had to do it because of COVID. Get it right? They had to do it.
I have a proposal for this section, right? That we cut it down dramatically, and we say, hey, this is what we want. We want, we want a kind of a place where people can leave their cars behind and walk and commune and do whatever they want, and we're open to pretty much anything that will allow that to happen. And that's it.
Yeah, sounds good.
We have talked about shared parking since 2015 in the Valley area. Nobody has come to us with the proposal because at the time that this idea was kicked around, no one was willing to bite the bullet and admit that shared parking is a zero-sum game. If one property owner gets permission to use parking space in the next lot, then the next lot has lost the ability to use those parking spaces. It requires a joint application and a transfer of parking rights. And I don't see that is likely to happen. People will continue to park in the excess spaces at Valley Mall when they have to, if they have to park and if they have to walk. Otherwise, I think the shared parking notion doesn't work for us.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, Dennis. But again, we're we're getting bogged down in parking and out, and dining and outdoor dining, and it's like, I mean, this is just what happens, right? And minutes turn into hours, and hours turn into days and years, and here we are again, right? And so, again, I would cut this section. I would propose to cut this section down to, what we want for the place, and we're willing to, the town should be willing to consider anything that or multiple scenarios where this would occur, and we're willing to work with whoever can give it to us, and leave it at that.
Actually, goal number 3, all the way down through the action plan, does not talk about shared parking. It only talks about the on-lot parking requirements being managed and rewritten in a way that allows larger size buildings and lesser parking. The whole notion of shared parking or public parking is not within the scope of this goal.
Fine. Just add public parking in as well. What's the big deal?
Just to get back to what Brendan was saying, I kind of agree, Brendan, that, you know, the developers that are going to come into town are pretty much the experts and know what they need, and we should really listen a little more to what they say. Nobody has come in and required, you know, we don't need any parking, or as long as it's not totally ridiculous. I think they have a good feel of what the market will bear and what they need. This way,
Yep.
that will help us drive our vision of what we will allow and what we want.
Yep.
If there is anyone who would like to pursue the notion of public parking further in the master plan, please write it down and send it to me, and we'll incorporate it in the next draft. And as I have said repeatedly since June, the intention of all of this is to get concurrence on the individual nitty gritty, so that when the entire element comes before the planning board, we don't get bogged down in a 1-hour discussion about something that's not in it.
Just to comment on the public parking, Dennis, I see it as kind of like a chicken or the egg, or a real catch-22. Where if we decide to put public parking and then the developer comes in and says, hey, that parking is totally useless to me, what's the sense of having public parking? And it also leads to the fact that we're kind of pitting one area we're looking to redevelop in Sterling against another one on Valley Road. Where, you know, where does the parking go? It's going to benefit everyone.
Mm-hmm. Tom, do you and I want to get us just get together and talk this through together?
Yeah, I'm available, you know, except for weekends.
That's an excuse that more of an excuse to get together and have a cup of coffee with you.
As long as it's not
Outdoors, though.
outside.
Tom, it's got to be
What's that?
outdoors. It's got to be outdoors.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't want my coffee.
And it can't be any warmer than 30 degrees.
Oh, you
And it
Americans,
can't be
you've got no
raining,
idea.
because if it's raining, the doors are locked.
No, they
We'll be
won't.
outside.
Yeah,
Mr. Bedford.
yeah, we could have a
Do you
cigar
mind,
and
Tom?
fire.
Exactly. That's where I was going.
All
Is that
right,
okay with everybody? Tom and I will take this away for a little bit and think about the overlay as well.
Please do that.
Thank
And
you.
let's move on to goal number 4, which is improve aesthetics. And the only thing in here that I'm talking about is signage. Right now, we've got a sign ordinance that requires carved wood or carved wood look plastic signs. And by actual count, only 16% of the signs actually meet that current ordinance. 84% of the users on Valley Road have managed to convince a board to approve a sign that does not meet our standard. And of course, the standard is based on not wanting to look like Route 22. But the fact of the matter is, from the malls to the gas stations, almost everybody has got even the banks, almost everybody has got a non-standard sign. And the question is, should the master plan recommend removing the restrictions on the sign ordinance in order to make it easier for developers to come to us?
I mean, I would say yes. I mean, I think those signs were, you know, the sort of hobby horse of whoever pushed them, and the big, you know, all the time I've lived here or I've been on the board, whenever you don't like something, you say that if we have it, we'll become Route 22. And so I think we should just, I would be in favor of removing that restriction, I think.
I mean, if you remember the Exxon gas station, when the Exxon station put up the canopy overhead, part of their corporate branding was to put the big letters Exxon up on the canopy. The zoning board spent 2 meetings deciding whether or not those words Exxon up on the canopy created an additional sign and violated the square foot requirements. And they wound up doing it anyway. They wound up getting approval for it. But how many engineers and planners and professionals on both sides got involved in that discussion? Are we in a position where we're ready to encourage development by not discouraging signage and by trying to regulate what the signage looks like?
The only thing I would like to see restricted with regard to signs, Dennis, is the variable message neon signs that, you know, that constantly change.
And yet that was specifically approved by the board for a good and valid business reason.
Yeah.
The Valley Mall owner pointed out that his leases require him to provide signage at the curb for every business, and he couldn't do that with the fixed sign. So he had to come up with the variable sign in order to satisfy his tenants. And ultimately, we agreed that we ought to go along with that because it was something that would encourage the mall to survive.
But we can see that that variable sign really hasn't supported that last sentence with all the vacancies that are in there.
Yeah, agreed.
I tend to agree with Tom. I'd like to stay away from the variable signs.
Right.
But are we okay with loosening up the requirement for carved wood or carved wood-like plastic? And interestingly enough, it's only the local businesses that have conforming signs because they can't afford the lawyers and planners and engineers to make the case for the corporate signage. The vets, the funeral home, they all conform.
Burger King's a wood sign. Bank of America is a wood sign. They have plenty of lawyers.
No, Bank of America's sign is not carved wood. It is wood,
sign.
but it's got raised lettering.
It's fine.
Fine.
Anyway, are we saying the majority of those signs are not conforming?
84% of the signs do not conform. 84% of the signs are operating with variances.
Seems like that.
So are we saying,
It seems like that sign, that statement doesn't hold water.
I got it. You want me to send you the pictures up and down the street, both sides? You can count them for yourself.
so basically, Dennis, we're saying that they can put their own corporate signs up and it's in their pleasing of how they want to represent their, right?
Well, let's start at Chase Bank. Chase Bank has a metallic sign which has got their logo on it and big lettering, and it is not carved wood. Go up and down the street and make that same analysis.
But has it got upward lighting or backlighting?
I don't recall.
I think that's what we want to do is take a drive at night and see what it looks like. Because that's the 22 that we're trying to avoid.
As soon as we adjourn, let's go do that.
It's raining. I'm not going out there tonight.
There are some internally lit signs. I don't recall which.
Yeah, that's right.
So
Dennis,
what are
you're
we
talking
exactly afraid of? What is the problem, right?
The
That's the one
problem,
triggered
from
by-
my point of view, the problem is we're forcing developers to jump through hoops to get variances from an ordinance which hardly anyone pays attention to.
Right. Okay, so to Tom,
But for me,
what are you afraid of? Yeah.
yeah, for me, I'd rather see uplighting. I don't want to see signs lit up from the inside.
Okay, so I mean, if that's,
Wood signs, they don't have to be wood signs, they could be metal signs, they could be anything like that. Just uplight signs, not signs lit from within with tubes or neons or whatever they're using today.
I mean, that seems to me that it's reasonable, and I think I'm with you, Dennis, as far as loosening up the restrictions on the carved wooden signs, because I again, that was somebody's vision from however many years ago that they managed to push, and it's been completely ineffective. So let's kind of get with it a little bit, and I think Tom's pretty reasonable with uplit signs. Why not?
All the gas station signs are internally lit, for example. Do we want to make that a variance item when they come for site plan approval? Or do we want to say, okay, yeah, we'll go along with it because that's your corporate standard and we'd rather have you come in than go away?
Or could we limit the hours the signs are lit?
Yeah, they shut off, that's right. But they should be shutting off.
Well, that's the Valley Mall as a desert theory. After 10 o'clock at night, there's no life on Valley Road, and the only life that you see is the internally lit signs that haven't been turned off for the night. If
For the
that's
gas
what you
station?
want, then let's put timers in the ordinance.
Yeah, if the gas station lights stay on all night, I don't know.
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
No, I don't think so either.
I think when they shut down for the night, and then that's it, they go off.
One of the stations leaves its pumps turned on at night, which means that the pumps are glowing, the displays are glowing, but all the signage is off.
Yeah, I'm not gonna split hairs on that. They're paying
Yeah,
for
and
that.
for security, you want some lights.
Yeah. The ordinance does say indirect lighting and stuff right now. Illuminated signs should be indirectly lighted or diffused lighting type.
Well, we approve every application. I don't know of any internally lit sign application that has been denied. So once again, to Brendan's point, let the economics of the development control. If the bank wants internally lit signage, if that's their standard, do we want to make it easier for them or harder for them?
Don't want internally lit signs. If there's the ones that are already there, they're grandfathered, they stay. But anything going forward, I like the uplighted signs. They're visible enough from Valley Road. We don't need glow in the dark signs or those internally lit signs. But that's my own personal perspective. If I'm outvoted, I'm outvoted. I'm fine with that too.
All those who want to draw a line in the sand on internally lighted signs and support Mr. Jones, raise your hand.
I don't mind either way.
I got 3
Yeah,
and 3.
I'm either for or against it.
Right.
That's not the biggest concern. The size and the time that the lights are on are more important to me.
I'm with you on that, Tom.
Yeah.
Okay, goal number 5 is fairly straightforward, and that's to readjust the zone boundaries to reflect reality.
Mr. Chair, can we pause for 5 minutes? We've been going since we've started.
Well, are we almost
Well,
finished?
are we almost done?
I think we're almost done.
All right.
I don't, unless anybody
Nope.
anticipates an argument about goal number 5.
No,
No,
this is very.
keep going.
This was in the 2016 rewrite of the master plan. the master plan committee adopted a rule for the committee's use that the new Valley district would be no larger than the current mishmash of districts that we already had, which means that all the additions on the periphery that were already in progress, like for example, ShopRite and Bot and so on, all those were excluded from the zone to be covered later. Well, it's now 5 years later, and the question is, shall we now take this opportunity to make the zone match what it is? The other thing that I have in here is that the thermoplastics development zone, the overlay that we created, anticipated intensive residential use. And we created an overlay zone that was essentially the Valley zone plus intensive residential. Now that that's gone away, I think we can eliminate the overlay zone, because whatever goes in there will be exactly whatever is allowed elsewhere on Valley Road. That'll simplify the zoning map. Any questions or comments?
No, makes sense.
They eliminate the conservation zone portion of 5 split zone lots as described in the conservation zone section. That's a situation where 30 years ago, we decided to zone the backs of wetland lots as conservation in order to keep from being developed. But the new wetland regulations that are currently in effect allow that prohibition anyway, and it just gets complicated to have lots that are split between residential and conservation in order to protect something that no longer needs to be protected. So I'm proposing, and this was in the 2016 draft, that 95% of the split lots in split zone lots in town that are split for conservation be eliminated, because other rules apply. Any question?
I just like the term concoctinate. A beautiful word you have in your last line.
Concatenate. Concatenate.
Concatenate.
It means merge them together, absorb. For a
Link.
definition of concatenate, read the Unix manual. It's full of it.
Looks good.
Okay, at this point, our next meeting will be on the 9th. Come prepared to listen to some engineers explain their virtues. And I don't know if there's any other business for this meeting. Speak up now.
Well, other than I'd be happy to join for a cold cup of coffee, Tom and David.
You're a brave
You're
man.
right.
Talk about parking.
Brendan, you're not invited.
You can handle that offline.
Brendan can't come.
No, exactly. He's not invited.
He's not coming until it's over 60.
Exactly.
And remember, guys, when you least expect it, I'm going to ask for the missing elements, the Barrett, Myersville, and Gillette, and so please start working on them.
All right.
All right, Dom and Tom, I'll up the ante and we can go to Chilento's and sit out in the bar.
Perfect. That's even.
Okay.
I'm not saying who's paying, by the way.
I'd like a
Take it out of
motion
our
to,
budget.
I'd like a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We'll
Second.
give that to Mr. Jones because he asked first a few minutes ago. All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Good night.
Thank you all.
Yes, thank you, guys. Have a good night.
Bye.
Good night.